Okay, we're live. This is another episode of Healing Intentions. I've got a roundtable episode today with prior guests, good friends of mine, ILLIODD, who's Adam, and then Dr. Ben Miers. Welcome, guys. So happy to have you here today.
What's up?
What's up, man?
Awesome. So there's lots to talk about, lots of recent experiences, and lots to catch up on. So, glad that we can make this happen. Really had a good time recording with you guys on the episodes that, first one with you, Adam, and a couple episodes ago with you, Ben. So,
Yeah, man. It's
you
kind of
know,
crazy, right? It's been an interesting year, but it's a little bit surreal, almost like the podcast has kind of taken off a little bit, man.
yeah,
We were
man.
just talking about it being a thing for a little bit. Shoot, it's been for almost a couple years, but when it finally kind of started out, it's like here we are.
Here we
How many
are. This
episodes
is the
have
10th
been?
episode.
10th, yeah, 10 episodes. That's awesome.
10th episode, which I'm excited about. And like we were just talking about before we hit record, positive things that happened in 2020. One of them for me is starting this podcast, and it's been great.
That's exactly what I was just thinking.
Quarantine happened, and I said, well, shit, what am I going to do with this extra time? And here we are.
It's kind of a
So
perfect blend for you guys because, like, I remember listening to your guys' first, your podcast on the road driving from Illinois to Michigan. So yeah, it's awesome, and it's kind of cool to see the level of, I think, probably positive reviews and things like that at this point in time.
Absolutely.
and it's Illinois is where we all, connect. We all lived in the same neighborhood growing up, so it's funny. Like, here we are recording this episode. Like, who would have thought?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
why don't we get right to it, Ben? I know you had an experience yesterday. Why don't you share with us, kind of your preparation going into it, and what exactly you did and how it all went? If you don't want to if you don't mind, just go ahead and unpacking all that for us.
Yeah, for sure. What happened like earlier in, or at least late in 2019 in August, I started just reading a lot of different things and having this want, some sort of internal drive to like try to become closer to either enlightenment or trying in some ways to become closer to God. Not not from the typical Judeo-Christian kind of mentality per se. Um, just wanted to get into spirituality, and I just listened to a lot of podcasts, lectures from like Vision like Yanni and meditation and mindfulness and that kind of product that they put together amongst so many different speakers, as well as just wanting to try something different. I mean, listening to you and your Peru trips and ayahuasca and kind of having that stage where you, if one wanted to kind of come out of the body and see beyond the veil, there are modes of something done. And I always had some form of fear around it to a degree because I didn't know what that was like. I don't know anybody that openly, unless that they've kind of had some sort of aha or been guided in a certain way. I don't know anybody that's actively striving to possibly see beyond the veil. And also, just to give you guys just some context too, I've listened and read a lot of authors that have talked about like near death experiences or even the afterlife. And so again, it's like another layer to like beyond the veil. So anyways, kind of fast forward now, I've done so much work reading, listening to you guys, your philosophies, welcoming the abstract to a degree, enjoying things for what they are. Adam, your art, just a lot of other things like, and the level of openness that you guys have to something like this, because we could get into drugs are bad, right? You shouldn't be on them. We were all kind of brought up in the precipice of that movement.
Yeah,
And
well, that might be on that could have just been on like the coattails of like the 80s and like the sort of, I think that was like Reagan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of
yeah,
like
Just say no.
Yeah, what was the campaign? Or no, it was
Just
the
say
it
no.
was the bushes too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the bushes that were
Yeah.
really got serious about cracking down on, everything that was cool.
You guys remember Dare in the 5th grade, and they had the police officers come and try to scare the shit out of us. And
Yeah.
I even ended up being a Dare representative later in like 7th or 8th grade. And look at me now.
Yeah. You got to wonder about that whole Dare program. Like institutionally, like what was all behind it? Like, was there money to be made in Dare programs? I'm just curious. Like,
Mhm.
who cashed in on Dare?
Oh, for sure.
when it was hot,
All
And then I
the
started realizing
parties.
like all these, it's just like all this really idealistic advice, and it's like, yep, don't do it. And it's like, okay, well, everybody's gonna be confronted with things that are a little bit harder than that. So,
Yeah.
it's funny.
And it's interesting, like had we gotten the education that we now know today, like I don't know if the experience would have been different. I think anybody could say that, right? Which
Yeah.
maybe, who knows, it could be what's to come.
I think the
But
problem is that they're lumping everything together, I mean, we were never taught that there are different things. It's like drugs are bad, it's not like no one said like, well, certain drugs are really, really bad and have like really bad health effects that you can't, predict so much. And then, there's, it's like lumping together cannabis with like heroin for if you're talking about recreational, both of them have medicinal uses, but if you're
sure,
talking about recreational usage, you can't, that's like apples and oranges. It's like not
so
comparable,
different.
but you throw those all in the same bag and it's like, yeah, that can't be super effective for the one size fits all. It doesn't apply there.
Yeah.
No. So kind of moving forward, just have done after like done the work, taking all the time, meditating a lot, getting the body ready, and having other experiences prior to that. Um, I just wanted to try psilocybin. I'd done research. We talked about early quarantine. I'd done research through Michigan's database, going into the Johns Hopkins research. Put all the articles in, threw it on an external hard drive, and I think that equally helped lessen the fear that I had moving forward into then ultimately deciding, yes, I do need to do this, or at the very least, I would like to. It's my choice. And I think it's different probably coming into the intention of, I've done all the things, I'm ready to go. It's my choice. Nobody's pressuring me.
Right.
Let's do this thing.
Yep.
So basically I got just 2 grams of psilocybin from a friend, and ideally he was going to lead me. He's slightly older. He's 68. And so he was going to lead me through this experience, as he's told me before he's had very good experiences with this. But due to COVID, and he's traveling, we ended up not decide we ended up deciding to do it away from one another on a Zoom chat. And I can say, for my first time now, looking back on it, which was against my better judgment, like I knew that I probably should have had somebody sober in my mind, there leading me through it as a guide. I didn't. So like I'm here, today sharing this. So I mean, and after it was a success. But anyways, like I decided to take 2 grams of psilocybin, and wow, was it different? Like I talked to you guys, you guys gave me music references, get out into nature, having some, good visuals and other things that were there. And I had this plan constructed in front of me. And in some ways, I knew that if I was possibly tripping and I didn't know if this was going to go good or bad, I wrote something down prior to even going into the trip, as things were interacting. And my other friend actually he decided not to stay sober while doing it. He had a gram as well, but he took it before me. So like there was a little time lapse, and then the amount was different. I took 2, he took 1.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting what I wrote down on my notebook prior, because I just want to write notes, because I had a notebook ready that if I could write, that I would, making any connections that I did. Before going in, I wrote this, and I
Always
wrote,
a good intention.
yeah, yeah, very, very healing.
Good to try at least.
So
Yeah.
I wrote down, um, I'm doing an academy. It's called the Dharma Life Academy. So this is a part of my Dharma moving forward. But I wrote down I am in capital letters, oneness. And then I wrote down just a word, just kind of in scripture, is I am that I am, when Jesus is met, by people that are basically wanting to crucify him. And I've played with that a little bit, that I've now kind of reconstructed my own mind is, prior to this, I am that, comma, I am. And then just from I listened to kind of spoken words through Above and Beyond. It's their flow state model, and it's kind of like when things are kind of in this fearful state, just breathe. So I just put down, just take a breath when needed. The neutral observer is key. And afterwards was, remember joy and love, and I'm enjoying my beingness. So kind of like those things. So I set that intention prior.
You wrote, those are all things that you wrote outside of the trip?
Beforehand.
Before,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, those sounds like things that you could have written during it too.
No shit, right? So
I mean, like most of the things that I write during a trip, like first off, it's like it's just, you never know how it's going to turn out, because if you can even write or read, at that time, you're seeing, like, you're trying to write it down and then it's like echoing in your head and you're like, what was I trying to write? But like, yeah, half the time I'm like looking back at it and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense at all, but it's always, it's best, I think, to go in with at least with like an idea of what you wanted to do, so that, when you do start to flounder, I feel like sometimes if you can get overwhelmed with the intensity of something, and then you kind of, your brain just loses track of like, what was I even doing? And that's kind of, I think that's when like life in general gets tough, is when you just get overwhelmed and you lose the base for like what your intention is and what, like, like that's why I think, it can be easy for people to just get overwhelmed in crowds, period. It's like, whatever you were doing, now there's like all these other people's intention just in its way, it's like you have to accept that. And it's just a different, it's like, I feel like every time that I go to a concert or a festival or something, there's always this like almost overwhelming anxiety about like having to give into this idea of you're around a bunch of people and you're going to have to get used to it. And like, you're not going to have anywhere you can go that's not around a bunch of people that you don't know, And it's like, once you get through that, it's like, it's liberating, but it takes a minute to set in,
And that's why it can be so hard to have a truly like healing, medical type of an experience at a festival. It can be done, but it's quite overwhelming, especially at the beginning. And so
it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine kind of like following the threads further, because there's so much of just kind of having to deal with what's going on.
Right.
But I would say that there's just as much a sort of, I think that's why kind of like the drugs and the festival thing go hand in hand, because there's like a part of like letting go where you're nervous right up to the edge of that precipice. And then once you go over, you kind of like look around and you like realize like, oh yeah, like these are just other human beings like me. And like, I don't have any reason to like be afraid of these people, like
Totally
just,
true.
and that's when you that's why music is like, oh, like, oh, there's music here. And music is like the thing that can bind us all together. It's just, pure power of, I look at music really as, it's just like another form of playing with light. It's like you can take the power of sound and frequency and literally like control it. It's kind of crazy how powerful it can be.
Yeah.
And interesting how we use it. It's so powerful, and yet we use it as like, pop music to like to make certain emotions of ours like feel amplified, you know, or something like that, you know.
It's so different, kind of like what you said, Adam, with the music and light. And I saw the tetrahedron in the background of your art. But I saw a graphic of this, and just like when you think of the actual triune of consciousness or a cosmos, even you think of music, light, and thought, or consciousness, and it's this ever so going loop. And I think there's a lot of times we do take it for granted, like you said, you know, kind of use it only sparingly when it could be a hell of a vehicle, you know, in the end, putting yourself in good high intentions and other things. I mean, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's kind of like one of those, it's kind of, I don't know if it's not necessarily a secret, but I used to always have this kind of feeling during a trip where it was like, you realize at some point you're like, I'm a part of this kind of like secret club that only some people understand this like, and why, what started to make me really realize is that I was like listening to these albums of like certain artists that, you know, it's like popular artists that you're like, oh, this is probably a good album. But when you listen to it, you realize like this person was like trying to literally like reach through the speakers and like touch me and like change me and like make me realize like that like life is way more. So like you go into it thinking like, oh, this is gonna be cool, this album rocks, and like you realize that the artist that made that only made music because they realized the power of it. And they also realize like, you know, Modest Mouse is like a good example of like an artist where it's all packaged up like pop music. It's like the way you want it to look. It's a product, you know, but like they realize that this product carries so much more than money could ever, you know, encapsulate. So I guess when I would listen to an album and I'd be like these guys had to be like tripping their balls off to make this music because like they understand everything. I was like, how do these people understand the inner workings of like life, and how didn't I realize it until right now? And then you come out of it and you just kind of realize like, okay, like I want to do stuff like that. You know?
That's so
Like
true.
you never quite wrap your head around like what they did to you. You just go like, damn, like this is what it's about. Like,
It's a powerful therapy, man. I mean, I know you're into this concept, Ben, of the, you know, synchronizing the brain hemispheres, and music is one of the few things that activates all areas of our brain. And talk about synchronizing the hemispheres. I mean, that psychedelics and music, they both do that, and they both go together like this. You know, the
Big
music
time.
that you're listening to while you're in a psychedelic session can completely change your session to make it go one way or another,
yeah,
bring up different emotions or memories, and
honestly,
it's just
so
incredible.
that's really when I said like you should listen to music, like that's really why a lot of people I think shy away from, well, don't listen to too much vocal stuff, is because you're at the whim of it, you know, and it could be good or bad. But I think like for me, it's always been like the real lesson has been to like write it out, because that's like I kind of say these artists kind of know what they're doing, but sometimes like you can be like, do they really know what they're doing? You know, because like you can get some music can get very, very dark and you're like,
For
man,
sure.
you know, like this is uncomfortable kind of, and you kind of want to squirm out of it. But there's usually almost always like that's the whole trick, is they're like just trying to grind it out of you, this like feeling of like whatever it is that you got an issue with. It's weird because you're the one who's got the issue. The music doesn't have the issue, you know.
Right.
Music's just there.
It's bringing
But
it
if
out.
it's bringing out something dark in you, some dark energy, it's like, you know, it's there, and then it, you know, plunges you into the light suddenly when you're least expecting it, and you're like, oh, this is what it's, you know, it's a roller coaster almost. It's like music at its best is, you know, playing with your emotions but helping teach you something about yourself through it, you know. But
Totally.
what you were saying there keeps reminding me of synchronicity. It's like that is what music is like, you know, you can listen to a bird chirping or a rock hit the
Oh man.
ground or you know, ripples in the water, and it all has sounds. But to take that and then form it into something is something, you know, totally human.
It's
Yep.
so interesting, that you say that, Adam, because like, for example, I have a really wonderful part of nature in my backyard. I have a ton of trees. And you hear like that binaural kind of beat going, frequency, if you will, have a ton of frogs, cicadas, birds
Oh man.
chirping. And then you realize that there's almost like this like Earth's like natural frequency that you hear that they have as you're going, as you're sitting out there and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm watching light refract through my water bottle. Like,
Right.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
normally see that, on your table and across your
Yeah, and
deck. Like,
you're noticing that it's holding the whole, you're not just noticing it, but you're noticing the rainbow, edges
the
around
spectrum.
it
Yeah.
too. And you're like, oh wow. And then you're like, wow, that's on top of like the wood grain. And that wood grain is like so
Look
intricate
at
that
it
it's almost
going.
endless, and you're like, holy shit, who built this? You're just like,
Yeah.
who, like, really?
Dang it, it wasn't by
The
my
jig's
hand.
up. The jig is up. Who's pulling the strings?
And what's crazy is just while going through this, I'm still on the Zoom call, and my buddy's asking me how you doing, like I'm doing fine, and whatnot. And it's interesting, like he had told me when I came on, like I'm starting to feel sort of a light body, like I feel lighter. My I'm trying to think of a sake for a better term, vessel, or even the kind of outside layer is now lighter than what we feel like in the density that it is now. And then he's like, all of a sudden I'm starting to feel my existence go away. I'm here, but like I'm not here. I'm like, okay, that's good to know that's coming. So like
Because he's an hour ahead of you, right?
he's an hour ahead of me.
Yeah.
So like I essentially like start feeling lighter, and then it's really good. I got all my stuff outside, like I've set the intentions and everything, and then all of a sudden it's interesting as things are taking shape and form that I'm having troubles talking. I now have that feeling like I'm getting, that I'm drunk, and then it's hard to stay up. Maybe I need a nap. And then this like kind of like formulation, like, damn it, like I have so much to say to you right now. And as we're going, and like, wait a sec, I'm not trying to offend you. I know what you're saying. Like, do you know what I know, that kind of a thing going on in this circle aspect. And I'm like, just trying to tell him like, shit, like understanding, lack of a better term for the other curse words, but like, it's like just understanding language is so laborious, language and speech from the intention of the cognition. This is tough. Why do I have to bother with all these labels and descriptors that I got to be so damn specific to get you to understand what I'm having to say, when it's like right here, like I could talk to you right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this, yeah, go ahead, Adam. No, go ahead.
Well, you just reminded me, and I think about this oftentimes, these certain experiences I've had in the past where, you have to just wonder, because I've had trips with other people present where you just kind of like you just like look at each other and you both think that you understand exactly, and maybe you don't really, but like I've definitely had that experience where like I've been looking at another person and like we're both like having this moment where it's like, are you experiencing this right now? And it's like, yes, I definitely am, and that's, yeah, it's like an unspoken thing. And you're like, it doesn't have to be spoken, because like how I process that into words is going to be different. And that's kind of that's the thing that I think is people need to remember about life and about, what you're putting into the earth, creativity period, is like, you can copy and learn from everything all you want, but the real thing that people want from you and that you need to bring out of yourself is like your own brand of like internal dialogue. The way that you process things is what makes you so special. It's like, so you lose
It's
a
like
lot of that
your authenticity. It's like authentically you, right, Adam?
yeah, but you lose a lot of that tripping. Like you can't grasp it quite, like the normal, like the really, eloquent, confident you is kind of like you can step outside of it. You can like see it happening in front of you. And I don't know, that's been a weird thing for me, tripping before, trying to like talk on the phone. You know, it's like everything you say will echo a few times, and like you start to get lost in what you're saying. You're listening to what you're saying after you say it, and you're like, why even bother? I'm done. You know, it's like I
Oh,
just
Adam,
quit.
that reminds me one time when I was tripping so hard, and I called Adam. I'm like, Adam, I'm tripping my balls off right now. He's like, no, you're not. He's like, you're fine, man. He's like, you're all good. And then it just snapped me back to reality. He's like, you're right. I am good. I'm all good.
I could tell, like, you know, you can hear, I could tell that you had like some uneasy kind of anxiety in your voice. Like, my reality is ripping apart right now. You know, it's like, yeah, it may be, but you know, it's, you know, it's the ride that you signed up for in that circumstance.
Yeah.
It's so,
and it does have an end, you know, it does. That's the thing that a lot of people don't remember, is it has an end.
Right.
There's a specific, honestly, the hardest thing to remember is like, don't get caught up in the fear. Like, enjoy this because it's going fast, you know, like enjoy this bit of time that you have to experience things this way before it's gone.
I mean, I think that's kind of a key statement there. That is a key statement, and good to know next time when I'm not solo.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I didn't say that, but I personally believe that going solo is like, it's the way to go. Especially, I mean, there's a lot that you can learn from being guided, but what I would be afraid of being guided all the time is like, your brain is just like the best shaman there is. Like, you've got things going on in there that like you don't even, you know, like you ignore a lot of the stuff you say, but when you're tripping, you just realize like, man, like if you just listen to yourself half the time, you know, you already got the keys to like the things you need to change in your life. You know what they are. Like, I think that's why people need to have the experience, is like, when people talk about a bad trip, it's like, what exactly are you trying to avoid that you just can't seem to like grasp? Because like, if you are, you could go into this thing and like, yeah, I'm gonna like if you're trying to avoid a thing, like that's the thing that you are not gonna be able to escape. Like, so if you're sitting there like, man, guys, this is not a good experience for me. It's like, well, there's some stuff going on then behind the scenes that you obviously don't have a grasp on, you know, and tripping is a good way to like really plunge yourself into that introspection. Maybe some people, I just think, you know, get this thing of like, it's a fun thing. It's like, well, it could be fun. You know, it could cause you to think about some stuff that you keep avoiding.
Right.
And you know what's interesting is that I had this discussion with another friend of mine around logics, and it's, if the outcome that you ultimately want sober is you want this outcome and it's benevolent in nature, it's good, right? But essentially, if with what you going, if you had a bad trip, but it catapults you into action to say, I got to figure out my shit.
Right.
And then that catapulted you into some actionable steps to get you to the desired outcome, then that bad is actually not bad, therefore it's good, kind of a thing. Sure. It's so interesting. And yeah, I can say that, you know, as a, you know, just feeling this very laborious nature of, you know, using my body, I'm like, man, I don't know if I can get up, you know, I don't know if I can maintain seated. And again, these could be all my false truths, you know, like, you know, you guys, had you been there, been just sit in the grass or whatever, you know what I mean? It could have been different. But what I chose to do is I chose to move my stuff back inside and put them all where they needed to be. Make sure you don't break your glass water bottle. Okay, we're good. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I just need a nap. You know what I mean? Like kind of that feeling where it'll just pass. And that might not be desired, but maybe I just need a nap. So I just like went down to lie on the floor, and I just told my friend, like, I'm good. Like, you can do your thing. And we both got off. Now while doing that, you know, I'm lying on my stomach. You know, oftentimes during COVID, I was having issues sleeping. It's almost like there was different changes to my body occurring that ultimately disrupted my sleep. So when I was furloughed, I was at home. I had hardly any patients. So like I took the time after I was done, all right, just meditate and chill for a second, reboot. And so like I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go lie on the ground. I'm just like lying there, you know, on my stomach. I've got the Bose playing some of the Dr. Hicks psychedelic music that you sent me, Adrian. I
Mm-hmm.
got the other one, the Adam, you sent me that other music, Spore,
Oh,
right?
I sent that one too. Yeah, Spores, the
Oh,
East
okay.
Forest. Yeah, yep.
Good.
And so I looked at that one, and then there was another like kind of like theta level relaxation frequency music that I played as well. And ultimately when I closed my eyes, I just started seeing the Adam, you said it was a closed eyes visuals, right? And
Yeah,
so like
I would describe it as a film that is happening in real time.
for sure.
Sort of.
Uh, and it's probably to each their own, right? So like I had
Yeah.
like kind of like this like kaleidoscope of geometric figures going and ever so changing in different colors with the music, you know, with the eyes closed. And then it was interesting. It's like, okay, did I make the right decision? All right, wait a second. Now there's nobody here. Now, well, wait, what if something happens? Am I
Mm.
good? You know? Oh, and then what's kind of interesting is that prior to all this, like the way that I talk to myself, one of the things you could do to kind of to help like fix your traumas and your pain bodies is like imagining like your higher self talking to the child you. And you know, as a parent, you know, like sometimes maybe some had a rough parenting degree where you know your parents are coming at you like it could break you.
Mm-hmm.
So like now I've learned like, okay, maybe from rather than echoing the traumatic experience, just talk to yourself as if, hey buddy, it's going to be okay. So it's like, hey bud, you're good. You know, just keep rolling. You know, so it's like anytime that you're catapulting in the negative, there's this thing like Adam, like you said, like you already have the keys, it kicks in. And
Hmm.
and so like, but it's weird with the separation of nobody, like is nobody here. And there's a lot to unpack here just with this, and that's like
Yeah, I mean, it's there's so many different levels to this.
the
You know, it's
facade.
like it, I have had some experiences when I was younger that were like so intense that like there's just no real talking about how you feel about it. You're just like literally, it's like strap in. You're gonna on, you know, feeling waves of stuff every minute, you know, and it's like it feels so intense to you in that time. But you keep saying like nobody's here. There's this song that there's an album and a song I used to listen to called Nobody's Here that it just kind of, you keep reminding me of, and it's like that's ultimately like that's the pinnacle of what you can kind of get to, is like this final feeling of like oneness. The feeling of oneness like basically catapults you in. You know, it's just you and the universe, you know, it's like the
What's
vastness of space and then you.
but what's interesting about that is this feeling of separation, right? There are many that have said that, for example, and this is not again religious. This is just a process. That in atheism there is no belief of a higher power. You are the power, right? And there, I think there's some truths to that, and there's some falsehoods. But there's an ultimate level in an evolutionary standpoint of people that, you know, in an egoic mindset, it's further separation from divine source or prime source creator. So like what's interesting that in this area of feeling separated, when you know it's not true, but it just that's what you feel right now, it might be the ego kicking in or the conscious awareness, the false conscious awareness kicking in to where like, all right, is so I mean, am I gonna die here? Like on my stomach? Like, is this death? I mean, how many friends have we had that have OD'd? I don't have
Mm.
anybody here to give me a reference point.
Mm.
Um, is this the legacy that I'm gonna live? I'm here. And then all of a sudden again, like this is not how it goes. Like maybe I'm over exaggerating and maybe I'm feeling this way, but like that's like in the moment, like but that's like what you felt. And then all of a sudden, like I told myself like, no, this is not how you design this to go. And so like get up, firstly, maybe you need to eject, get it out.
Yeah,
Right. Like,
that
oh
could be
shit, I fasted. There's nothing in there to get out. It's there.
purge. Right. Like purging can happen.
Which I
Mhm.
mean, like I remember, Vision like Yanni saying that he puked when he had ayahuasca.
Oh yeah.
Just that feeling
Very
of
common.
that purge. And
even
so
even with mushrooms, I mean, it can cause nausea in people, and they can. Oh yeah, that can happen.
jackpot.
Yeah.
That's the thing about mushrooms is it's I think that it's a double-edged sword, and it is that way for a reason. And I think that like what I was gonna say earlier, I kind of like trailed off whatever, like before this
It's all good.
meeting started, but like a lot of my art and stuff that I do is influenced. I mean, you can kind of see it, but like I'm into really drastic stuff. If it's colors, I want like all the colors. Like on LSD and stuff is specifically like you start to notice like the intricacies of like color differences, and you're like, that can be so fascinating. And that taking that with you. But like there's also like these really exaggerated images of like human behaviors. And one of the things that I noticed many times tripping is yeah, it's just like people use their mouth too much, like they talk too much and they put too much bullshit in their mouth, like
Mm-hmm.
and like it just like it kind of like brought up this idea of me. It's like, yeah, like you want this experience, and it's been sold to you a lot of times, in movies or whatever, as fun or a party or whatever, drugs or a party thing. Well, that's where like mushrooms come in, or a psychedelic experience comes in, where you're like, shove that in your mouth, and then like it just like kind of, it's like turns you back on yourself, and like now you're like looking in the mirror and is this supposed to be fun anymore? It's like it's not really. It like Western culture doesn't get that. We just turn everything into some product that you shove in your mouth. Like that's what it's supposed to be. Shove this shit in your mouth. It might not even be food, like, but shove it in your mouth, as long as someone's getting paid. And ultimately just think about that. Just oral fixation, period. It's like,
Yep.
we're sitting here talking. Obviously we're all good at it because we've been, cultivated this ability to speak, but like, yeah, it's also really one of the most important things for me to learn, that I'm still learning and I suck at, is like to shut up and just listen to people. Like even people that you think like might not be like wiser than you, like that's the worst, is when you're just like, oh, I gotta like, pour my wisdom on you. It's like, no one gives a shit really about your wisdom, man.
Yeah, man.
Only if it applies to, only as it applies to you and what you are doing with yourself. Like, if people want to come to you for that wisdom because they see what you're doing with yourself and they go, oh, I like this outcome. Like maybe he can give me some pointers. I like that. I think a lot of people are scared to like ask for help because they're too proud to be like, oh, I don't want to copy. Like, you don't have to copy, but if you see something working, just like go ask.
It's
You're
like
like,
a
dude, I
very
like
like
this shit
lower.
you're doing. I want to be more like you. It's like flattering too, to be like, okay, yeah, I'll share some advice with you because you like what I'm doing. I'll tell you how to be like me.
Exactly.
It's a very like lower vibrational. Like if you think of like the first three chakras, their power, their survival, their other things, it's not as high. So it's like the mere fact, like for example, like if you want a higher level experience in love, in cognition, etc., it's like if you sit and listen, like I wanted to know what you guys had for me. Like I wanted to know what you knew. You had the journey prior to me, and it's this openness of like wanting to know your knowledge, you know, out of non-ego, out of the higher intention. And so yeah, it was so well worth it because just inevitably, as I'm here in this experience, like while I'm having a not so good time at the moment, and this probably guaranteed, this probably happened within 5-10 minutes, 5-10-15 minutes, something like that, very short. And then I was like, maybe maybe I shouldn't have the separation. Maybe I should just give my friend a call back again. Boom. And what's kind of crazy is he was texting me at the moment. It's like some people throw around the frequency and they throw around the channel, just here and there, right? Like the frequency is the cosmos, and we are the channels. And when something like that, like you're linked into the same thing. So what's interesting is, as I'm like, maybe I should go ahead and give him a call, like he'll know what to do, he's good, like he'll have my back, it'll be all right. He's saying, hey man, like, cause like you left abruptly, like I don't know if he's really okay, but I just want to make sure, like, it's kind of like that parental kind of feeling, because that's what he holds a parental spot too.
Sure.
And what's kind of crazy is like boom, like we're all connected in this issue. And then all of a sudden, like as that was happening and I'm explaining to him like what's going on, like now I'm up, now I'm on my side. It's like I already had the healthcare provider kick in. Hey, if you are going to puke, don't be on your stomach, kid. Don't be on your back, guy. So
Right.
I like prop myself up on my side. I have a bucket, but like I didn't need the bucket. And even like before that, actually, I skipped a moment. Yeah, because no, actually, I take that back, because I had a couple moments where I got off the line with him and came back. Um, when I got off the line the second time, like the things crept back in terms of like death. Like, is this how it's gonna be? I mean, I've talked to two people, one close friend, one family member, right before they die. Like, I was actually giving a massage to one of my friends when she passed away.
Wow.
Like we had to go into emergency med, friends and I, all in that spot. And kind of come to find like later, like because everybody was like hoping that she came back. She had a really laborious like issue that go ahead, Adam.
No, that's
Oh.
that's kind of crazy timing for all that. Like, did you
Um,
have any inclination beforehand that
when you
it was
saw the
like that
difference of
serious?
weight, when you saw her difference, you could see it go, like she went down. She needed a heart transplant, things like that. But I didn't know, we didn't know it's going to be that day. We all decided like this is the weekend. We're all going to get together at a condo timeshare and hang out together like we did back in college. And then it's like this Denver Packer conference championship game. And then I had another family member who was dying of terminal cancer, and so I just knew that maybe palatably it'd be good just to do a little massage action. So like I was just doing like a shoulder massage because her shoulders hurt, and all of a sudden, boom, went blank. And I'm like, holy shit.
Wow.
And so needless to say, this process went by. And while we were in the emergency room, everybody, obviously your natural inclination is, I hope she comes back. If you take a higher perspective and you realize how much somebody's suffering to some degree, honestly, I just chucked up a prayer or whatever, and it was, thy will be done. Like the outcome of this coming back or moving forward is nothing. Just want to express some love to you. Whatever you choose is your decision. And so fast forward, that was almost 9 years ago, guys.
Wow.
I was in a Reiki session, and I had my Reiki master channeler kind of come to me, is like, is there anything that happened to you at this age, 25, whatever? Sure. There's a female energy that's here that just wants to tell you something, that you gave the act of kindness and the strength that she needed to continue moving forward. She just gave me a big love. Here's a thing of love.
Awesome.
And so what's interesting is that in this moment here, as I'm like, no, people have my back. Like essentially as I'm there, I get this feeling of people that have passed that I've seen as like guides. My grandpa, uncle who I've had dreams about, but also like he's really and I very connected. I have other things about that's kind of like you can't, it's inexplicable, but like he's there just talking me through this, and he's the one that I actually help. Like I was saying a prayer right the night that he was put on hospice. He died when I left the hospital. My wife and I, 4 hours later, he passed away. And when he was there, it was, I kind of said your last rites in some ways, kind of from a book, another prayer, but his eyes open. Like in that moment, he'd been comatose. He'd been in a coma for a long time.
Wow.
Wasn't able to express language, couldn't speak, he couldn't open up his eyes in the end. And he opened up his eyes and he looked at me, and it was present right there. And all I told him is like, all right, bud, it's okay. Like, you're good. Like you can go. You have the rite of passage to move forward. Like, it's all right. I know, like, this man was had a lot of hardship, some of which that he created himself and some of which it just happened. He had polio. Like, he was told he couldn't walk right before the vaccine had come out. He was 64 at the time.
Wow.
He could play golf. He played golf at Medina. Like, he shot low scores. Like, this guy was told that he couldn't do anything. So like, he's had that fighter mentality all the time. So it's like, hey bud, the fight's over. Like, you've already done what you need to do. Move. It's okay to move on. And that happened. And so what's crazy is now this other way around, kind of full circle, is like, here he is. I could feel presence, not like a visual feel, seeing. You just feel like all these different people. And then all of a sudden, like, depending upon your belief system, like, I had other people like higher than that. So like, if you think of hierarchical, in that, like, in the beginning, like, kind of thing, you realize that it's the isness of prime source creator is always there. Like, these divisions, if you will, all same in rank, but there's like kind of like divisions, how things go, like, they're with me too.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just started this like cascade of feeling where like, now I'm on the upper, man. Now I'm like soaring up. And then I called my buddy back, and we were just talking through that stuff. And it was amazing to be both on the up and up.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like this catapult of all the knowledge that I might have read. Like, I was and I'll pause for a second so you guys can kind of enter in. But like, we had this feeling of like, now knowing what I know, being like the prime source is always there. Now I'm just humbled. And it's almost like some people might say, if they're brought before a being of divinity, some people might either idolize them or kind of create a god out of them. If you knew that you were equals, but also you still know that undeserving love, the unconditional love that's there, that's for you, and it's expressed to you, it's almost like enough to put you on your knees and humble you to say, man, I just thank you guys so much, like, so much grace, so much everything, and just thank you. And then we kind of went into 0 point related conversation, which we can go there in a bit. But yeah, thoughts there, guys?
Wow. Yeah, man, that's really interesting. I mean, the concept of death, the concept of death is something that comes up a whole lot in any kind of work like this. And there's so much that it represents, is it your physical death? Is it the death of your ego? Is it the death of like a previous self that you thought of yourself, and that kind of person is dying, and now you're kind of transforming into this new birth of, this transformation of a new person you are. There's so much. And then just the concept of people that have died in the past that are in your life still somehow. There's so much there, man. Like you said, 0 point and beyond. But yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Well, shoot, there's a lot to go off of on there, really, of all the stuff you just said. But I mean, I don't know. Death is just the thing that, to me, it's like the most constant thought that I have is of this like constant sort of like you don't have much time type of thing. And I don't know. Like, I think that it's comforting when you go into experience that's really intense, and at first you kind of go through all the crap, and then you get catapulted into this different space where, I don't know. I think you just kind of realize like everything's cool. Like, whatever you're doing's cool. Like, it's cool, if you want to make changes, you make changes, but I think that you come into this, for me, the most positive thing that psychedelics have done is, I mean, basically changed, like, not changed who I am fundamentally, but like made me more into the person that I am and not be afraid of that. Like, I realized over and over and over again the folly of just all existence. Like, you know, and when you see people that you love pass, and when you see people that you love make decisions in their life that are like lifelong choices that are like making them unhappy, I just feel like, you know, it's hard to go into this stuff without bringing too much ego into it, because it's like, you know, you start to feel, I think that the trip, you know, you start to realize that you're like a fragment of this God thing. You're like, I'm a fragment of this, I'm a real part of it. And you realize like I have a lot of power. And I think for some people that can be the scariest thing of all, is they think about things they've done in the past, they think about their powerlessness, you know, they're like the thought of like having a power over their whole life is scary because they don't know how to wield it, you know. It's just, it's like daunting to think about. And I think, you know, that's people that you see, like, I think the word like shadow work was coming up, you know, when you were talking. There's like,
Yep.
you hear people talk a lot about that type of work. And I think that really tripping is a lot of shadow work and people don't realize it. It's like, it's a lot of thinking about, like, because when you strip away everything and it's, you know, when you say it's just nobody's here, there is somebody there, and it's like death. Like there is something there. The thing that's there your whole life, aside from your birth, is your death. Like, you know, you feel you're, you know, you feel you're invincible when you're a teenager, and that's the whole thing, is you get to experience what it's like to be like, I don't
Mortal.
know, like, yeah, I think a good word would be like ripe, you know, like a teenager is like a ripe human being. Like you're never going to taste better than that, right? Like you know, I think that right now I'm in a wisdom place or a mental place that's way better. And I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't trade that, you know, the 34-year-old mind for the 18-year-old body, or like 18-year-old recklessness, sort of, you know, willingness to have fun at all costs. It all like plays its part. But yeah, I think you need to, you know, when I tripped when I was younger, it was less about death. It was more about like the craziness of the experience. You know, I think once you have a few people, you know, like you had said, you had those few experiences. I've had a few experiences as well. Hang on just a second. Actually, you guys just
For sure.
keep going without me, and I'll pop back in real quick. I gotta let someone in.
Sounds good.
Sure.
So what's crazy, man, is, you know, just this thought process of one of the main, so like, you know, last episode we talked about the QHHT, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions that people want to discover in their hypnotic regression of their past life, after we're all done and we're in the kind of like subconscious collective, is what's my purpose? Then number two, what's my purpose? And is there life after death? And it's like you can hit like both of those suckers just right there, you know, with one stone. And what's nuts to know that there is no disconnect, and all of a sudden, like, this knowledge of the frequency, you're on the same level. You know, you might not in this like experience here, like terrestrial experience on earth, understand everything that you truly do, if you will, like, just if we were to say that we are our higher selves as well. But like, now you at least know that there is something other than the body. You know, albeit call it God, call it goddess, call it mother, you know, mother earth, call it whatever that you want to. There's something there. That's the bottom line, and that's really all that matters. And then it's like, now I went back to like prior, trying to articulate this point, because like I started seeing time to a degree. Like think about it, guys. Like, I'm sure that you guys reflected on your past. I'm sure you could see the wholeness of what was going on, past, present, and future, all happening. I kind of wrote this down last night because I had trouble sleeping.
Well, yeah, just imagine like that. Like you just go into it with this idea of like, oh, time is a thing, you know, like the clock is accurate, and you know, and that time is a real thing. And then you get into the experience, and it's like, no, this is all just stuff that we have imposed, and like we say it's this time, but it's there is
time.
no time. And like, once you realize there is no time, you're just like, well, I have to relearn it all now.
Totally. It's like if you guys saw a lens, right? If you guys had a lens of time, Anita Morjani had mentioned that when she had her near-death experience, it was a 360-degree level of time, if you will. But let's just, like, for the sake of the argument, use like a lens, right? Basically, whether or not you want to shine light or your thoughts of the time segment on one side, past, the focus is still here. If you do it present, focus is still back in the same spot no matter where you go on that whole thing, meaning kind of like you're in the now. And so, like, I always love like the kind of play on words, right? And I know we talked about this before, is like the Yahweh. After hearing something else after that is it's nowhere. Yahweh means nowhere. And I guess that I learned yesterday that the Jewish community is not allowed to say Yahweh. They have to say something different. But like Yahweh means nowhere, but also means now here. So like this like level of like presence now. And what's kind of crazy is now all I could think of is two things. All I could think of was the infinity symbol, the 0 point, that part in between.
Yeah.
And then all I could then feel, because
That used to be like my thing when I was a teenager. That's I mean, before I just in my becoming an artist and stuff, I used to be obsessed with infinity and things, but I think that was like the biggest realizations is like you kind of realize like that you are in it, and it's such an obvious thing, like, but to realize it fully, like that you have been given an opportunity to be alive, and you are like you are an entity experiencing the universe for itself. It's like Jim Carrey says, like it's the universe dancing for itself. And what you just said, like and it reminds me of Modest Mouse again. They had this song, and there's the line that's the universe is shaped exactly like the earth. If you go straight along enough, you end up where you were. And that's basically the whole thing is you are where you are. I mean, we can talk so much about so many things, but this chance to be in a body and able to influence things is, that's why it's sad, I think, when we look around and realize that, the world, which is a pretty evil place, the world is a place that is meant to take advantage of any weakness that we have and try and use it against us. And when you see that people have been defeated, sometimes it's hard to admit, it's hard to say that when you think about like things, if you think about other lives or things being on loop, these people in your lives that have had hardships, if you think about, that's like their fate forever. That's their fate, to be that person. And it's your fate to be a healer, and it's my fate to be an artist. But actually, before we just go like dive into that and go like, this is you and that you're determinate, have you guys seen the movie Soul?
Yes.
So right, and I feel like that movie blew away my whole. It's like, yeah, sure, you think you're supposed to be a musician, but is that really like your purpose? Not. I mean, no one said you had to be a musician to affect the earth and to do something meaningful, and no one said that you have to do something super, super meaningful to be, to be a part of all this. Like, like what resonated with, I've seen this movie like 15 times, so I probably have a little bit, like my kids have watched a lot, so I've soaked a lot up. But like, I think what resonated the most with me is that, the whole movie is about him thinking that like music, it's so important, and all I want to do is just get this place. And he just realizes once he gets there that like, this is it, like I got it and I did it, and that was cool, but he realized that he was kind of a piece of crap to somebody else and tried to make his own trip a more important thing than their trip. And go like, oh, well, you don't have much meaning because like I'm a musician and I got meaning. And it's like, is it really about always having to define, or is it okay to just like be a part of this world and like, try and do good, try and be good in it,
It's a great point, because I think after having this experience yesterday, it gave me the feeling of this like honoring the presence of the person in front of me, right? Like, so say for example, that teacher honors the fact that he's teaching this girl music, and she's a phenomenal trombone player, or like, she's, or some other thing like that we're not always present. We have things that distract us all the time, 24/7, and almost by design. And it's just like one of these things in which that if we were able to just live the dance, and I so like the idea of just like living this like dance artistically, just from like just expression, but
John
like you're
Lennon, dude.
so in the
Life is what
moment.
happens when you're busy making other plans. Like,
Mm.
you can sit here and think about like, I'm going to be this, I'm going to do this. Well, your life's happening right now while you're thinking about this. So better make it quick, whatever it is, like whatever you're thinking of doing. Like, otherwise you'd
Yeah.
just be like a guy who sat and thought a lot and missed out on the good stuff while it was happening,
Yep.
which I'm guilty of. I think that I can't go back and get that, but I've always been guilty of that. An overthinker and an overplanner. I wouldn't be making crap like you see behind me if I wasn't an overthinker and an overplanner. But at some point in my life, I had to find a way to like, and I'm still trying to find a way how to not, overthink and overplan too much. Like, I think there's a lot of, it's one of my like wisdom points in life that, like my mom or something is always like, thinks is like one of my weaknesses is like, I never have felt like in too much of a rush to get to place. Like, I mean, in my own mind, I almost feel like I was just telling my buddy the other day, like I was putting so much unneeded pressure on myself for years to try and achieve something to impress others. And the more and more that I realized that the only person I was ever really trying to impress was, it's like when I was younger, I never cared about impressing people. I was like, fuck, I'm young. It doesn't matter. I do what I want. But sometime in my 20s, I started starting to compare myself by some metric to like, how is my life doing compared to other people? And eventually I started going, well, if my things aren't turning into some kind of profitable enterprise right now, then I must be doing something wrong. So then I started pressing myself to always hustle and hustle. And I'm not knocking the hustle because I love it. Like, I think I'm like addicted to it almost. Like it's a mode that you shift into. And it's why I love rap music so much. It's like, it's a mentality that you just like jump into. That's like, no, fuck it. I'm doing this by myself. Doesn't matter what you say. I am going to bootstrap this shit like with every bit of everything I have. And I love that, man. It's, I think, a very American mentality, I think, to do that. But you also have to be able to just like, to what end? You have to be able to be like, I'm the master here. Like, if I want to be ambitious, I'll be ambitious now. But if I want to flip that switch off right now, like I got to switch, it's like right here, flip the switch. But when there's no switch, I think that's when, you start to go off the rails. It's like, cocaine,
Yeah.
and that's why it's like you start to run away with like, I've got this to do, this to do, this to do, and I can do it all. It's like, dude, you don't got to be doing that.
No.
Yeah,
Gotta do
man.
it to yourself
It
like
really
that all
comes
the time.
down to listening, like we talked about earlier, really getting good at listening and listening to yourself. Like, we are our own
Exactly,
healers.
like
We
your
are
body
our
being
own.
like, yo,
Yeah,
chill, man.
exactly. And I wanted to mention, back when we were talking about listening, one of my favorites, we have two ears and one mouth, and we need to use those proportionately. We need to listen a lot more than we talk. And
Twice as
oftentimes
much.
it's the other way around. And so it's easy to just talk and overthink, and just, without sitting and actually being present and realizing, like, what the hell am I even talking about? Who's listening? Like, who cares? What do I want to do? What's
Right.
my goal?
Yeah, not to get like into too much into like habits of very effective people or something, but like literally, like it's funny how like eye-opening books like that were in school and things, because like I think that's like, I've always struggled with getting what I want out of life, and like that's like one of those like just huge lessons that's very hard to get. It's like this selfishness thing of like, well, I just want this. I want this thing to happen. And you go in circles in your head about, well, I want this thing to happen, and God damn it, it's going to happen. It should happen, And when you start to realize that other people hold the keys to that, like that they've always held the keys to that. I mean, like, you're not going to do anything just to, you know, everything you do is for yourself. But if no one else ever paid any attention to it, like, it wouldn't be all that sweet of a victory. So if you want to like get that victory that you wanted, you have to start to respect others. There's just no way around it. And once you start to respect others and care about their story and stuff, like the other stuff just kind of takes care of itself. Like, you know, like they realize like, oh, this guy is not just like talking to hear himself talk. He even realizes that he can talk to me about this and, you know, a little bit later and doesn't have to dump it all on at once. Like, you know, he's got like a wisdom to not have to always be in control of the situation and still can be cool.
Yeah.
Which, you know, that's hard. That's very hard. You know, I'm a big mouth a lot of times. But it's also the isolation. Like, if you don't have enough like this, I think, I mean, honestly, I think we should do this more. And I think we should do it with, you know, maybe one other person, throw them in there. Like, why not get another voice in here? But like, this to me feels like a therapy session. Like what you were just going through, Ben, is like, brings up like, yeah, when I was in, I've told you this before, Adrian's aware of it, but like, you might be aware of it. Like, when we were younger, I was in a car where there was a really bad car accident and there was like fatality, whatever. Like, I really witnessed a lot of that. And like firsthand, it was very gruesome scene. And like, that was one of my first like exposures to some really like crazy, traumatic anxiety bringing, like, just making you think of, you know, it was like we were going to a movie, like we were doing some typical teenage stuff. And like, that just like, there's your night. And like, you know, you recover, but I've always felt like I never really fully recover. You know, that's like where some of the PTSD stuff comes. But, you know, my brother died a few years later. He committed suicide and stuff. That was like, to this day, something that really affects me. It doesn't matter like what you do or say. And that's like what you were saying about when you witness people that you love die. For me, it kind of made me a little bit more like not give a fuck about things. Like, it made me more like anarchistic about life, nihilistic, and just be like, I mean, and I think that it's a useful thing. It's like, you need both. You know, the nihilistic side, I think, is good because you have to be able to go like, at some point you have to be able to go to some stuff like, none of this matters. You know, this doesn't matter. And I'm not going to like make it seem like it matters, you know, but on the other hand, you know, you could go like, every single thing matters, and both are simultaneously. I think that's like the truth of tripping is simultaneously true, you know, the yin and yang right there.
Yep.
But yeah, you know, going through, you know, those experiences, I think it changes fundamentally how your lens views everything. And it maybe makes you a little more cynical, maybe makes you a little more selfish, because you're like, you know, shoot, if they, you know, like my brother died at 16. I have this thing that's like, you know, whatever he didn't get to do, I'm going to do twice that, you know, like, you know, and it's like, that's not even fair. Not even my lot in life, you know, to have. But, you know, I think it's this like, you know, it's not a bad thing, but it's just, I don't know. I think that talking about all this stuff and just going down the avenue and bringing it all out is like, can't hurt, man. It really can't.
No.
What's really interesting is that going through some of these experiences and being able to dialogue with my friend, you know, I'm looking at the lens like, okay, what did my parents think of when I might have done this? Because, you know, I did some crap, you know, younger at some point in time, and you're able to flip the spot. You know, there's a want to be a parent in the future. How will I be as a father? I mean, Adam, you know, shoot, man, you're super lucky to experience that kind of essence of what you're giving your kids. Like, what are you giving on the other end? And it's so interesting that, you know, even in arguments, kind of like my framework of arguments is switch is like, okay, relive the scene from you. Now relive the scene from them. It's like in the moment of my trip, like in afterwards, now all of a sudden I have this easier ability to empathize and relive the opposite perspective,
Yep.
you know, and kind of with what you were talking about, and we could go into this possibly later, but like after I was done, after I got, you know, I was telling my friend how much I appreciated them, kind of like as an uncle figure. My uncle passed away as a paternal side, but like you realize the value of your parents. You realize that what they did in your life. Oh shit, I'm fine. I'm gonna one call them. I want to express to them their value.
They're like, what are you calling me about? You know, like,
Uh,
why are you being
I
weird right
mean,
At least you
now?
waited
yeah,
until after.
Like you're being
yeah.
affectionate. What the fuck's going on?
Truly, truly. Which unfortunately, the separation
You're
between
like, oh, nothing, just drug. No, I used to see. That's not a bad thing. I used to always feel like Sheldon. Like I would have a lot of feelings, and I would never express those feelings to anyone.
yeah,
You know, even my
yes.
parents. And like there was times when I would just like trip, and I would realize like, holy shit, I fucking love everyone in my life like so much, but I like never let them know that, and I'd be like bummed about like, man, I wish I could let them know some way. But then I'd, you know, start, you know, then you're the weird person. They're like, what is wrong? You know,
Why are
oh,
you overly
he's probably just
communicating right
high.
now?
You know, then that's why they just explain it away as like, oh, he's a pothead. You know, you didn't know
Yeah.
he's just eccentric or something. And I like being, you know, that's the thing is like, if it's between being eccentric or not, like be eccentric in any way that you can be eccentric, because that's how you exemplify like who you are. Like be loud with your expressions and like say shit that makes like, don't just walk around the world trying to be PC all the time for everyone, because it doesn't do anyone a favor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I know,
Easy
and
to speak.
that's probably not the most popular opinion. I'm sure everyone's like, "Fuck that, shut up," you know.
But the
Don't
popular
express
opinion,
anything.
yeah, the popular opinion is like self-repression, not expression. They're not speaking their
Sexuality is
truth.
a great example. Is like, you
Oh
know,
man.
do we even know? Even in this age of like, you know, woke sexuality, do we even as human beings really know what it's like not to be sexually repressed? Even our ideas of woke sexuality are repressed.
Mm-hmm.
Like ideas of the, you know, like I'm not an expert and I don't claim to be about like the LGBT or as far as that goes into things. That's like kind of an attempt to claim back some sort of edginess of sex, but like that's because we don't really fully get it all the way as
Mm.
people or something. I think it's not that we don't get it; it's that we don't know how it fits into culture in a way that's not like destructive in some way. Like, you know, that's why we wear clothes. Like where's the like line drawn between where we can handle sex and not, you know?
And like the realness of it, for example, because you know yesterday I had this like surge of energy going through, and the only way I could describe it is like Adrian saying in previous podcasts are, well, how would you express your psychedelic expression? Well, how would you describe an orgasm?
Right.
Because
Right.
the feelings could be physiologically the exact same. And so like all right, so we're gonna get weird if I start saying, well, yeah, so the psychedelic experience is almost like an orgasm, which all right, so is this like a term where we can't use the word tantric? So like
Mhm.
other areas of the world, the practice of like a tantric related thing is very sacred in nature between, you know, the divine masculine feminine energies, you know, like what, so we can't express that now? No, we can't do that in the Western culture. It's not accepted.
I
Yeah.
remember one time writing down, and this probably doesn't even make any sense, but I remember one time writing down in the midst of a very, very powerful trip. I was like up typing out ideas that were in my head. Like this is how like I come up with some song ideas and stuff. But like this is a typical example of like what I was saying earlier about how like, so this is like the typical me, and then the woman that I'm dating during a trip is like, I will trip and like it just flips me into like this different person, and I don't want to go to bed anymore. And I'm like, I got a lot of work to do. You know, I'm staying up all night. I got a lot of shit to write down. I got songs to write. Like, this is crazy. And I don't want it to end. And then there's like my girlfriend who's been tripping with me the whole time. But it's like, name any one of them in the past, because it's always the same shit. And they're just like, you know, I'm ready to go to bed. Like, just like turn this off for me, you know? And I think that's when I realized, like, it's not them, it's me. Like, I am a different animal. Like, I don't see any reason not to be that way. Like, but I remember, like, when I was during this time, you know, and like, it just seems always like it irritates them, like, because it does. It irritates them that I think what I've realized is, like, you know, and this is probably controversial, I suppose. I mean, but it's common sense too. Like, I think I realized that the women in my life have noticed that I start to, like, not care as much about them when I get into this work zone. Like, it's like they're less consequential and they know it, you know, and they can see it that and honestly, it's always been a thing. Like, my passion for music and art has always interfered with my relationships, because my wife currently and any girlfriends I've had in the past have all kind of been like, I don't get it, you know. They A, don't get it, and B, probably, I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to, I don't want to knock them and say anything that's untrue, but I don't think they even believe in me, you know. Like, they don't believe in me like I do, and they never have. You know, they look at it and they're like, wow, they're a little kooky, like, for thinking that, you know. But once they see that it never ends, I think that people, you know, that's when people know that this is me. Like,
For sure.
it doesn't end, you know. And well, but what I wrote down though is something about, like, that, you know, basically you are like this sort of like this masturbatory orgasm machine. Like, your body is like this constant antenna for sensation. It's like, and you can do things to your body to make it so, but you don't even have to. You could sit there and meditate and you're just, like, turned on, you know, like, full of energy overflowing out of you. And it's sometimes we just forget. We're like, man, more.
True.
Like, just you know, equilibrium with what you've got.
What's interesting is I know that we've talked about, like, the Ankh, right? Like, for example, I read the book The Ancient Secret, or the Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life.
I'm gonna smoke some weed right now.
There you go.
Very good.
I just
very
ran
good.
out, or I would have joined you.
My intentions. But, like, basically, when going through this book, at the end of the book, they start talking about what's called a Merkaba breathing, and this idea of going through just the channel, starting from kind of like right underneath, like, your pubic area, and taking the energy all the way up. And there's this practice with mudras, there's practice with breath, and ultimately the design of that type of thing would be getting your light body going, your kind of like active Merkaba inside your energy field. But more importantly, it's like, once you get there, like, Adam, like you said, like, if you meditate to a degree, you can produce the same amount of energy the same way as, like, the orgasm. But the goal would be is needing to repurpose that energy rather than just letting it go and then, you know, ejaculating per se. It would be the fact of repurposing that through breath work, and then, like, getting it to go, like, that energy, kind of like turning it, ready to go up, nope, now we're going to change direction one way, and you're going through the body, side to side, front to back, top down. Like, that's actually what the Egyptian Ankh is. And I was trying to tell somebody, like, that 0 point for one is there, but that redirection is that, like, key to life, this prana, that needing to, like, reuse it, recultivate, and then all of a sudden, like, boom, like, that's like a part of our essence. And in doing that, maintaining that, like, as you resonate, as you feel your energy go up, like, orgasm and that peak is almost like our active, like, physiological, and I'm not going to use this to, like, the completest term, because, you know, I can't say for a fact that this is what it is, but, like, this is what I would think. But, like, our closest to God's spirituality of feeling it is that. So, like, rather than, like, I mean, I think that kind of, like, changes the perspective of what we even think of sex and orgasm and other stuff.
What I find and it's always fascinating to me, I think, that, you know, that we are, like, just that we are what we are, period. It's just, like, kind of funny if you look at us like aliens, you know. But, like, we do all these things that we just have to do and accept, you know. But, like, you need another person to achieve your feeling of like, I mean, and really, I mean, it's kind of a feeling of, I don't know if it's a feeling of dominance, but it's a feeling of like rightness with like being human, like, and you require another person to do so.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the strangest thing. And it's like the hardest thing as a parent to try and like, it's why no one wants to have that talk. It's like, how do you explain this to somebody? Like,
No.
and it takes a lot. Like, that's why I think, you know, I'm like, man, I wish my parents had explained it better. It's like, well, what were they going to do? It was
What's
weird for them and it was weird for me.
You know what's
Yeah.
interesting is you brought up the the LGBTQ, you know,
Yeah. Which I think is
AA
just, you know,
plus.
people expressing, people acknowledging that the way that you're born doesn't necessarily have to affect the way that you express yourself on a day-to-day basis if you don't want it to, you know.
No,
Mhm.
and it's like in that, like, you know, people get so hung up on this image of what does that look like? Male, female, male,
Yeah.
male,
See,
female.
this is,
You
and
know what I'm
this is
saying?
why
It's
to
member and
me,
member.
Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah, to me, it's, I have a hard time jumping into the talk at all because I think it's like not my place, you know. And it's a talk that's a lot, you know, if you like jump on Twitter and stuff, it's always happening. It's the same as the race talk, you know, like I am a race, but I don't necessarily feel like it's my place to like impose my idea, you know. It's like, it's just not. I think that I'm for everybody being treated fucking right, you know, treated equally and appropriately the way you would treat any human being. But I just don't know like where it is my place as a white male to jump into these talks and impose my, you know, opinions. So I never know. Yeah, I never know what to say. But I would say that, yeah, for me, I look at males and females as like there's barely even a difference, barely, you know, little bit sleeker features, fat in different places that, you know, it's proportionally, some women may exemplify that standard more than others. And some, and this is why we are where we're at, is, you know, some people are born males that just, you know, there's parts about them that just seem and feel more female to them, and that's their experience. And the same, you know, if it's probably, you know, if you like look at pornography as an example, it's easy to see why some people feel comfortable being like sexually idolized by others, because some people have a body or a aura to their persona that invites that. Like, it could be the way they look, and they have not like, most of all, like, you see, they want to look that way. That people know what entices other people, so now they're trying to augment themselves to be more of this. So we're starting to, now that there's more of a divide that we created, now it's like people are going back into like trying to go like not wanting to feel so divided or something. No, but
Exactly.
it's so hard to talk about these things because we can never forget the divide either. We physiologically like act, I think, quite a bit different, and not men and women, but masculine and feminine, you know.
Right. It's about
Can
those
be in any
energies.
body, but like the energy of more masculine or more feminine, it acts different. It presents differently.
And that's what I wanted to say also, you know, sex is, when it's done right, you know, can and should be a very spiritual experience. And it is that joining of the male and female bodies, literally, and the energies. And it feels like it's one. You know,
Mhm.
go from the dual to the non-dual, the oneness. And I mean, I felt like I am tripping, you know, in some sexual
Mhm.
experiences, like, whoa, what is going on? What dimension are we in right now? You know?
Yes.
And that's my problem with a lot of organized religion, is they try to take that away. They try to say, don't talk about sex, that's not, don't do that, that's not proper. And they kind of try to strip that away
Yeah,
from
I mean, they
us,
go
you know?
like, well, but you can have, you know, you can do anything you want with your wife, you know, when you
Right.
have one, you know.
Yeah, right.
Like,
don't
well,
don't
that
touch don't touch
it's
that
so
until you
it's
get married.
yeah, it's like, oh, I feel so good for my wife who just has to deal with all my weird shit that I'm gonna dump onto her when I, you know, that's like arranged marriages, like, you know, guess we'll see, you know, guess we'll see what happens tonight. Like,
Yeah.
That's so for sure.
And yeah, I guess, and that's the thing that I think about the most when I think about people who decide to go against their like traditional, you know, their gender that they were assigned with, is like, some people just like don't want to be playing that game. You know, like I think some women or some people that were born female uh don't like to be like the subservient, and a lot of men expect it, you know.
Mhm.
And it's become a thing where it's like, I think that it's just a stigma toward men in general. I'm not going to say it's unjustified, but it's a stigma. And I think like some people that are a little more open-minded, free-spirited, and maybe more like self-reliant people are just like, I don't need that, you know, from another person in my life. And that's where we get into play things where I think, you know, we new definitions of what a relationship is, because pretty much the definition we have of what a relationship is a very old one.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. There's a book I just recently read, and it's called Bringers of the Dawn. And in that, they talk about this return of the male and female energy, and it's kind of like this redefining moment of what they are, because what we've seen now is this change, because like, you know, innately, like this world was meant to be like kind of like a maternal or a feminine related world. And what's kind of crazy now, what you see is this really cool, since the women's rights movements, um, this empowered woman. We're getting to the point where what we've created in society is the empowered female. But what we've actually taught in some degree is the empowered female, but less of her femininity in terms of absence of feeling. So like she's now they're now empowered, but sometimes the feeling is a little less, and the male has lost a what it like the divine masculine by very nature, in addition to the empowerment or this essence of power, is also a sense of feeling. um I don't know how often that you guys, when we were younger, like were able to say that I'm, you know, you were able to express your feelings per se, but I can tell you in my I wasn't.
No.
So it's like, so like there's this like almost like
It would
reset.
have been probably made fun of, I imagine.
Oh, you
Yeah.
It just would have
soft
been, it would have been
names.
scoffed at, you know. It would have been like, what is this? Like, oh, we're gonna do this, you know. It's like, okay, fine, no.
I mean, it's like Adam, what you said earlier is, um, you know, basically expressing yourself, possibly even overly communicating to these entities, you know, wife, parents, kids, like, all right, dad, yeah, whatever, man. Like, and going, but like,
Yeah.
really, it's like, it's only because like we've been taught to repress. So it's very interesting in this kind of air communication like energy.
Yeah, I mean, repressing things has its benefits, but I think that we could probably reassess how it's done societally. I mean, I don't think it's ever been an agreed upon thing. I think people, it's just like a knee jerk reaction. Like, there's certain things in life that I just want to like hide from my kids, and it's like, you know, I think there'll be a day when I don't want to, but some things I'm just like, I don't think they're ready for that yet.
There's a time, or there's a way.
No, but then again, like, yeah, what are you sheltering them from? I guess I don't want anybody to get any sensational like obsessions with weird things that they don't need to. And
Sure.
I think that, you know, we came up in an age where I've said this so many times, like I the internet was so new. Our parents are not savvy like we are. And they, you know, when it came about, we learned it quicker than they did. So we had all the tools and they didn't know how to monitor it. So I feel like, you know, I feel like I've just been exposed to so much that, you know, we have plenty of like traumas and things to deal with, because we've just seen so many things that we didn't even ask to see that were just put in front of us, you know. And then I guess you just kind of, it makes you a stronger person, or it makes you have a thicker skin in the end. So it's like, I don't want my kids to be exposed to these things, but then, I'm speaking from my perspective of like the calm person who doesn't mind being exposed to these things, and it's like, do you want a shelter, or do you want to just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off and be like, hey, this world is crazy. Like I could
Sure.
like hide my kids all the time. Like I could tell my kids all the time, like, we don't want you running around outside unmonitored, but I don't have to go into the details of that's because some crazy dude could like take them and rape them and murder them,
Sure.
like,
Sure.
how do you impress it? That's the hard thing of being a parent, is like going, you can't do that. And they're like, well, why? You're like, well, because a dude could rape and murder you. You can't say that to him. So you're just like, because I fucking said so. Because I said you can't do it, and I know everything. And they're like, then the kids grow up typically like we did, with like this, my parents are just overbearing. They don't get it. And you're like, yeah, well, you're alive to tell the story. So
Sure. So I wanted to ask you guys this, kind of as the neophyte here of the psychonaut. And it's, I got this want to put like, I've talked about kind of like my transition, out of physical therapy to some degree, but like I got this want as a creator being of creating something and putting it into the world. Like I now know that the experience of what I had of the, experiencing possible death, um, now like I can empathize with those that are trying to get off addictive drugs, who might OD or other stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like I want to be that guardian, like overseer of the process, and I would like to work in one of those like holistic practices that do so, naturopathy, whatever that it is, integrative medicine. But like I guess what I would say this is I found out what I wanted in like the way that I'm walking life and how to continue. Like to me, I guess it feels like, whether it be walking up the stairs or the helicopter, after afterward, it feels like it's the same. Like I wouldn't change anything, right? But it does tell me like maybe a little bit more about my purpose of how I want to construct this thing. But I guess I should ask you guys, how did doing psychedelics or continually going through these sacred rituals, how did it give you guys the expression of what you want to put in the world? And then I should say, then what do you want to put into the world?
Hmm.
you go first.
Great question. Great question, man. Yeah. It's an ongoing process.
We're all at the precipice of this too right now. Like I feel like we're all, I mean, we are all already doing something, but we're all currently actively moving into a new chapter that we're guiding ourselves. We don't have to do it, but we're doing it because we want to. But yeah, go.
Yeah.
I just think it's an opportune time for us to talk about this particular topic.
Because Adrian, you were talking about with Jonathan. What did you just your application? What did you just apply to in the psychedelic medicine?
Yeah, it's something that Dr. Crescencia Felty, who I've had on my podcast before, she's in the program right now. It's the California Institute for Integral Studies. They're based out of San Francisco, and they have a psychedelic certificate in therapy and research. That's like a year-long program, and I applied for that, interviewed for it. I'm waiting to hear back. I'm pretty hopeful that I got in, but it was really competitive this year.
That's exciting.
Yeah. And in that, they obviously, you learn from all of the top like psychedelic therapists in the world. I mean, it's amazing. And you go through part of the MAPS MDMA training protocol, learning how they're doing all of that. And yeah, so super exciting. But yeah, to answer your question, I mean, it's ongoing for me. I didn't touch psychedelics until I was 30 years old. I'm 34 now, and just like yourself, I did a lot of research before touching any of them. Like I had many opportunities to try them before, and I was like, oh, I'm not ready. It's like, what was I really afraid of? Honestly, it's like, what was going to come out, and I still have that fear all the time. Every time I'm about to go into an experience, it's like, oh boy, and it's like all that work, all that stuff that's deep down. I think there's still lots more coming up and lots more to work on, but my whole thing is I want to get the truth out to as many people as I can, and help heal, as many people as I can. And I'm not doing the healing. I'm just the facilitator, and that, holding space and, whatever, kind of showing people the path of like, hey, maybe you might want to go down this way, check out this way, but kind of being their guide, leading them through that. And so, that looks like a lot of ways for me. I'm about to start my practice, my website, which Adam and I are working on diligently. It's almost ready to go live.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to start seeing patients there and helping them, with their path, with their integration work, and with, however I can be involved in that. The goal in the future is to have my own psychedelic retreats, and really go deep, with people where they can come in a week or two or a month or whatever they need, and just, come back out of that a completely transformed person. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and many more ideas, but kind of that's the nutshell.
Cool. Very good.
Yeah.
Adam,
What about you,
man.
Adam?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff going on in my house at the moment, so I guess we're kind of like working our way out of this, but
Yeah, we're getting towards the end here. Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, it's like Adrian said, it's a constant battle, I think, to to forge ahead and maintain your will while life's throwing all this stuff at you. And like, just a second, I gotta take a break real quick.
That's cool.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
There's the daddy life coming into play.
It's kind of crazy. I think that we both talked, and it would be interesting to get somebody else on, like Adam was saying, but like the art of conscious parenting. There's a book that was out, just with another physician, PhD, but she was featured on Lekiani's Mind Valley. But I was thinking of kind of like what you guys were talking about, soul. There's so much to unpack with that and this impression that we can make.
Yeah.
But
Oh yeah. So
anyways,
yeah, like jazz. Yeah, life is like jazz, man. I think that's one thing you can take from it is like, you're improvising, and you gotta deal with what you gotta play the cards you're dealt. So that's the fun of it. I think you can get overwhelmed and stuff, but you realize that the fun of it is kind of dealing with the adversity.
most
And
definitely.
that's the jazz of it. But yeah, I mean, talking about, I would, sorry, I got interrupted because my kid just needed my help real quick. But yeah, like Adrian talking about doing research, and like, yeah, there's patience is key. I think, when you look around at the way people expend their energy, I've been told over and over again by people in my life to like, hurry up, do this. I'm like, for what? I'm trying to conserve my energy to do a certain thing, and I want that to have impact when I do it. If I was just like leaking energy everywhere all the time, just doing it to show off, what would that amount to except for a more watered down end product? So it's like, I think there's no reason to rush into things, especially like spiritual things. And that's the difference between it being a party thing and being an intentional thing, is like going, I want to take this trip and I'm going to do it this time, instead of being like, there's nothing wrong with just being like, today's the day, too, being like, today feels good, I'm going to do that. That's fine. But like, just being intentional about it. And like, I might have had a little jump start on you guys, because I think my first experience was when I was 17. And the first time I smoked, I think, was when I was in 8th grade, maybe. But it took me, it was like once, and then like years before I smoked again. Like, it wasn't a thing. It was just it was more impactful then. Like, I remembered the experience for a long time after, because there was only one. But ILLIODD, I think, was, I did a lot of research, and if I hadn't done that, I don't think I would have felt comfortable going into it. And that's kind of the difference, I think, when people look at you like you're crazy for doing it. It's like, well, if you did the research that I did, and read all these different experiences, then you know a little what to expect going in, and you know that it's not going to kill you. It's, you know, it's got a time. You know, when you look at ILLIODD and it says, you know, the effects when, you know, oral are expected to be 16 hours, you know, then at this dosage, then that's comforting, because you know that people have done the work and that those people know a hell of a lot more. You know, when you see like Pical and Ticals of the world, you're like, well, these guys know a lot more than I know.
Yeah,
For sure.
I'm going to trust them, you know, and they lived to tell the story. Yeah, the
for
Terrence
sure.
McKenna's of the world, that, you know, you hear just the people are, you're like, okay, I want whatever that guy's drinking, you know.
Really quickly before we end, I wanted to make sure we go around, and since there was so much negativity and hardship and everything that happened in 2020, I want to go around and just roundtable list off some positive things that happened to you in 2020, or some good things that came
Yeah.
out of it. So I'll start. For me, during quarantine, I started this podcast back in May, and you know, it's been going great and really enjoying it, and just kind of getting started, honestly. I also graduated naturopathic medical school, so that was huge.
Yes.
And
Big
then
year.
I also moved to California, so which has been a, you know, dream of mine for a while. So those are really 2020 and all was pretty great for me. I'll have to say.
Yeah, man. Congratulations. It's been
Thank
a good
you.
year. And it's been fun to be along for the ride too. Like
Yep.
I feel like blessed and grateful to be helping you along the path in whatever way I can, and like you helping me in whatever way you can. You know, it's all love.
All love, brother.
It's good stuff though. It's good stuff. I'm excited. It's like, it's things, you know, things that have been in motion, and
Yep.
I feel like I'm putting into motion a lot of the things that I've been kind of, you know, setting up in the background for a long time. So
Yep. Yep.
it's fun.
Good.
Yeah.
That's great.
How about you, Ben?
So yeah, just made lemonade out of a lot of lemons. I built a clinic that wasn't producing, and I hate to use that in like a business type way, but I've met a lot of people in Ann Arbor, created a lot of really good relationships after not being here for too long. I created record numbers for this clinic, not twice. So before the shutdown came, after shutdown, and now it's happening again. Like I've had to do it, kind of like
Yeah.
reawaken the beast again,
Hmm.
which takes a lot of resilience to watch it, all your hard work go down to nothing again. I've completed the level 1 certification of the quantum healing hypnosis technique. I've made really good relationships with a naturopathic office here, and then also an integrative medicine physician that's kind of a pioneer in Arbor, and who's somewhat connected to the Thrive movement. And I'd like to continue moving forward in that direction. But honestly, in the meantime, I'm going to continue to be the dancer or be the instrument, and play that song and dance the dance, and not try to rush out of the experience.
Awesome, man.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys?
For me, 2020 was, I don't know. It was really all about getting back in touch with what matters most. Like, I got to spend a lot more time with my family, and I think that it was a opportunity to tackle some things that we need to tackle, instead of, you know, being always out being trying to make money and not focusing on the relationships. So we kind of had to focus on that, and that was needed. And I think it made us just rethink everything, because we were like, you know, if this hadn't happened, would we have done this? And it was so essential. So like, what were we doing not having done these things?
Mm-hmm.
And it, you know, it needs to be ongoing. It's like, I don't want there to be a time where it's just like, oh well, we're going back to the way it was. It's like, I don't really know if that was working, you know, like.
Yep.
So I think it's changed up the paradigms, you know, that we were living under a little bit, and shaking things up. Let's see, what's some new stuff. Like, yeah, you know, I gave me the time to be able to dive into my business. times, 3. My businesses are kind of related, but it's allowed me to focus into each of them and get that going. And I mean, ultimately now I'm in a place where I guess I decided to bite off like sobriety. Going into 2021, I stopped drinking,
That's
and
huge, man.
I've been
Congratulations.
sober for
Yeah.
1 week now. Actually, I think it's been exactly a week, or maybe one more day. So that's just, it wasn't exactly a plan. It's just something that's been kind of in the back of my head that I know there's certain things I want to accomplish, and I think that it will help me to stay focused if I just completely shake up the whole game and just flip it on its head. So it's like, I'm going to remove these shitty habits and replace them with some good ones. And we'll see, like 1 year from today, like we'll see what we're working with,
Adam, I got an ask of you, because this is what it just synchronistically came up at 10:10 yesterday. I ask just for today that when you're done for the day and completing your day doing what you did, and in that sobriety, is play Cube's "It Was a Good Day." You got to do it, man.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Yes, because you'll
Yes.
definitely feel the beat, and that's
in.
kind of like what I
I
felt
love
yesterday.
that song. So it's been
Yeah.
a minute since I heard it, so I definitely
It'll
will
feel
do
good.
Love that.
that.
Love that,
Absolutely.
guys. Well,
So yeah,
this was
dude,
a lot of fun. I know we
it'd
could
be
do a
fun
lot
to
more
do
of
it
these.
again.
Definitely.
For sure. Yep.
And appreciate you guys very much.
On here, or who knows? Who knows could join? Who could bring some more? I feel like,
Let's
there's
Sky's the
just
limit.
like sky is the limit. And like I actually considered yesterday, hey, maybe I could just have an experience today and then come into it. But yeah, who's to say that next time we couldn't all just we could all just hop on the Zoom meeting right mid peak and hash it out, guys.
I love your ideas, Adam. You're always full of the best.
We'll actually put our our foreheads right onto the camera, and I'm sure we'll
Our third eyes will all connect, and
we'll be
become one.
touching in another realm.
Lovely.
Well, on that note, we'll end it there, and thank you guys so much, and look forward to the future, all of us together.
Always, man. Thank you.
Yeah.